So first of all, allow me to thank everyone who managed to join the call today. My name is Mulay Ahmed, and I am the secretary at the Sahrawi Association in the USA. And I am honored today with the two of our very famous and very knowledgeable and volunteers, activists. Today we are pleased to have both Erik Hagen and LAGDAF SALEC. And I will just start with a quick introduction about both of the speakers, and followed by a couple of questions. I will give them the floor for them to introduce themselves, but I won't do justice just by introducing myself. So first of all, I'd like to start with Erik Hagen. Erik Hagen is a board. He's on the board of the Western Sahara Natural Resources, or Western Sahara Resource Watch, a volunteer organization that works in solidarity with the people of Western Sahara, and particularly specializes in research and campaigns of the companies and the government that works with the Moroccan interests in the occupied Western Sahara. Erik is also the director of the Norwegian Support Committee for Western Sahara. He has followed the matter of natural resources in Western Sahara for about 20 years, primarily from the perspective of natural resources. His background was as an investigative journalist and photographer. And then we have LAGDAF SALEC. He is a Sahrawi activist who is now based in Dublin, Ireland. He's a member of the Irish Western Sahara campaign. He joined the refugee camps in 1982. After fleeing the occupied territories, he was a teacher of the Spanish language in the camps for many years before he got to serve as a deputy of education director. When he went to Spain before becoming now a member of the Western Sahara campaign in Ireland, where he is coordinated many events in Ireland, including the issues of natural resources. I'd like to start with you, Erik. Again, thank you very much for finding the time to join us, and we are truly grateful. I personally been following the Western Sahara Natural Resources. It's always been my go-to website every time the question of the plundering of natural resources comes in, and we appreciate all the work that Western Sahara Natural Resource or Resource Watch is doing. So please, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and if you have anything that you would like to share, and then we will follow. After that, we will follow LAGDAF SALEC, and then we'll go with questions for the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to drop these questions on the chat. If you'd like to ask those questions directly, just raise your hand. There should be a button that shows raise your hand, and we will coordinate that accordingly. If you are a non-speaker, I will mute your microphone in the meantime. Just let me know if you'd like to intervene. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this initiative. I will be. This might be a little bit frustrating. I'm speaking with one window and I'm having the shared screen on another one. I see, well, you're having, the shared screen is not really perfect here either, but let's see if I can, I can't really make it big. I don't know what, making it big here, but then I can't make it big.
What you want, you just do the just on the bottom right, yeah.
I know, but it just doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work. Yeah. So anyway, let's just do it this way here. It doesn't really matter that much. Basically, our association, we follow, as was said, all matters relating to the resources, and not only the resources, but also other companies contributing to the continuation of the illegal occupation of Western Sahara. That means both companies and governments. It could also be international institutions, financial institutions, insurance companies, well, many different sorts of interests involved. A large part of the work that we've been carrying out the last, well, since 2006 has been focused on the European Union and the EU's interests in the territory. The European Union particularly got involved when Spain became member of the European Union in 1986. Suddenly, European Union's border was to Morocco. It wasn't that before. And Spain, with the interests they had in Western Sahara, primarily through fisheries, European Union became more entangled in the conflict since then. So the EU's history, so to say, has to do with Spain's dirty way of leaving the territory in 1975, where they left, the government left, the military left, but the businessmen maintained, or the Spanish commercial interests maintained. So the European Union has, since the mid-80s, basically been funding the occupation of Western Sahara directly. This means all kinds of infrastructure programs in the territory, but also overall support for international trade agreements with Morocco, and core funding then to the Moroccan government for operations in Western Sahara. So it's been important for us to document this. Documenting means that we follow vessels, we follow transport of goods, and we try to publish the information that we have on our website and summarizing it in statistics or single cases. The website of Resource Watch contains now just a very short reference to the very important development of the European Court of Justice. The Court of Justice had its hearing earlier this week, relating to the two different trade agreements that Morocco has with the European Union covering Western Sahara. One is an overall trade agreement, and the other is a fisheries agreement. Many people mix these two things. The trade agreement covers trade with agriculture products and fisheries products. It means fish in different shapes that comes transported and sold. While the fisheries agreement is about fish activities, meaning vessels, boats, fishing boats, catching fish. And these two different agreements are up for evaluation, so to say, by the Court of Justice of the EU after complaints from Polisario, the liberation movement of Western Sahara. And well, we don't know when this will be concluded, but we expect, I don't know, later this year, we will see conclusions from the Court of Justice relating to these two agreements. This is a fundamental issue, not only because fish is probably the biggest part of the resource equation, so to say. Fish involves a lot of money. There's a large amount there's a large value involved in the fish products itself, but also of the demographics. Fisheries is the sector where Morocco is able to settle Moroccan citizens on occupied land. So it has a political demographic consequence as well, aspect to it. The European Union claims to be operating within the law. They say we operate within international law, in accordance with national law, and they have different ways of arguing that. All of it is straightforward misrepresentations of international law and facts on the ground. They often are not coherent in what they say, and it is quite easy to tear down their legal arguments. European Union has already lost in the Court of Justice, and they basically produced facts. They have made alternative facts relating to the Sahrawi people. The way the European Union has addressed the Sahrawi people, you will see if you have the other slide, if you see the slides in front of you now. This is very small letters. You're not supposed to read this stuff, but you will find on our website a report called Above the Law, which shows how the European Union have circumvented the rulings of the Court of Justice in the past, leading up to the current dispute happening in the Court of Justice. And what's happened, what is remarkable, is that is a common approach that we see not only the European Union take, but also other private interests, is that they say we operate within international law, because we have made sure that the population benefits from what we're doing. What that means is that the European Union is totally, and the companies, the private companies involved, totally ignore the right to self-determination. Since Western Sahara is a colony, since the people have the right to self-determination, they also have the right to decide these things themselves. This is the whole idea of the decolonization law that came after the establishment of the United Nations, that the African colonies or the colonies internationally, the people there have the right to decide for themselves. So this entire aspect of self-determination, of consent, is completely ignored, and then they only focus on the benefits. And what they do with benefits is that they're saying the population of the territory, they benefit from what we're doing. There are some controversies in that, because by doing that, they ignore the concept of the people of the territory, and they refer to the population, which is something different in Western Sahara, considering all the migrant workers from Morocco having moved in. So they have replaced the concept of people with population. Now, this is getting very technical, but the report illustrates both the law and how the European Union has misrepresented the wishes of the Sahrawis on the ground. So every time a Sahrawi organization would condemn the European Union for acting in violation of their rights, the European Commission would take those letters of condemnation and show it to the other member states of the European Union and say, we are in dialogue with the Sahrawis, and they benefit from it because they are unemployed. So they're twisting a condemnation into something of a process of consultation. It is, in my perspective, deeply racist. It is a way that the European colonial powers addressed Africa in the 1880s. The European powers would say, we are colonizing Africa because they benefit from our civilization. They benefit from our God, for our language and legal system. We are civilizing Africa. And then they would take over all these territories and say they benefit from it. This is exactly what the European Union is doing today. They are not taking into account that this people of the territory, they actually have a voice. They have the right to be heard. And this entire right is ignored. And they say, okay, we do it because you benefit from it. It's deeply problematic. And this is exactly what now the Court of Justice is going to relate to. Has the European Union failed or honored the obligations or the law that the Court of Justice stipulated a few years back? So I recommend this report. It took us a long time to do it. And this particular page, which is very small letter here in front of you, shows how the European Union has created fake news. They're basically made, misrepresented and misquoted Sahrawi groups. This is that's the fisheries and the European Union approach. I just wanted to go very quickly through the different resources. I will not take much time. The phosphate sector is, we are mapping all the vessels entering and departing Western Sahara. We do that like 3 times a day, and we've done that for 10 years soon. And by the end of every year, we compile all the data. Again, this is very small letters, but you will find all these data on our website in a report series called P for Plunder. P is the abbreviation, the short for phosphorus, the element phosphorus. Which is necessary for all life on Earth. The phosphorus is in all our cells of our bodies, and the agriculture industry needs it to produce, have a fertile soil. So the phosphate exported from Western Sahara can be very easily monitored. Yes, please mute all other microphones that are currently on this line. All the you cannot really hide a vessel. It's quite easy to see where the trade is happening. You just follow vessels. And by the end of the years, by the end of every year, we produce maps. We confront all the importers. Importers can be confronted in different ways. We contact the management of the companies. Sometimes they're actually quite listening to our concerns. Other times you can you can be in dialogue with the owners, the shareholders, the pension funds, the trade unions, the harbor workers, the shipping companies, the insuring companies, the local journalists, the governments. There are many ways to put pressure on the company, and we're basically following all of them because we believe it is wrong for any import of phosphate rock to be funding the occupation. Basically, that's what's happening here. The importers globally are funding the occupation. There's been a massive shift in the trade patterns of this phosphate. It used to be going to many different companies internationally, particularly North America. The entire North American trade stopped exactly 2 years ago. That is, as far as I see it, maybe the biggest shift in the entire trend of the plunder is that after 30 years of North American imports, the, I don't know, maybe $100 million annually exports to North America stopped. And the current importer is primarily India, where the Moroccan state company has an importing company, and New Zealand and Brazil. And then there are some tiny shipments going to other countries. But that's basically the trend now. And New Zealand is basically our focus these days. This little illustration shows, you're not supposed to really understand or see what it says, but you will see on the left column, that's the year 2012, and to the right column, that's 2018. And you see from 2012, it was a very diversified import portfolio that Morocco could play with, so to say. And today, there are very few importers left. The entire blue segment at the bottom, which consists of 50% of the entire trade in the past, that's the North American trade. That stopped 2 years ago. So the entire blue segment has now gone. And we're only left with the red segment, which is India, and the green one, which is New Zealand, and then just a little bit to Brazil. So there's been a massive shift and also a reduction in the total exports, which is positive, we think. The minerals should not be exported while it's still under occupation. Still, the most concerning, I would say, the most concerning development over the Western Sahara plunder the last decade is the development of renewable energy sector on the occupied territory. It started in 2012 with the first contracts, and 2012-13 when Siemens from Germany came in. There are 3-4 different problematic aspects to this renewable sector. One is that it fuels the phosphate exports. So yes, it is a green energy, but is actually providing energy to the plunder of the minerals. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that this is driven by the private companies of the Moroccan king personally. So you could say the motivation of the king personally to having any sort of UN peace accords are maybe not that much when he's actually profiting personally from his own wind project in Western Sahara. The third aspect is that Morocco is becoming dependent on green production in Western Sahara. Just last week, or 2 weeks back, a large French infrastructure company got a contract for production of energy cables from Western Sahara up to Morocco. An important contract for Morocco. By that transmission line, Morocco will become dependent on energy production in Western Sahara. It's very grave. And then finally, the European Union might be involved in this after a while when Morocco is then exporting energy into European Union. And finally, through this industry, Morocco is basically greenwashing the occupation. It means Morocco can present itself as best in class on energy and appear on international climate negotiations, bragging about all the fantastic things they do in the occupied territories, as if this is Morocco. So they're actually dragging in the conflict into the fora of the most ethical arenas. And this is not only international conversations on climate, but also it could be on private investment portfolios on ethical investment, so to say. So suddenly you have the occupation of Western Sahara within the ethical portfolio of global investors. So this is a very, very serious development. There are 2 American, quite recent developments in this. These things are very small again, so you're not supposed to read this. But one wind farm in Dakhla, it's going to be massively big. It's going to provide energy for mining of digital bitcoins. This is a huge Moroccan-American thing. And the other is General Electric from the United States just also got a contract for infrastructure for Siemens in Western Sahara. the oil sector is basically gone. There used to be a large program for oil exploration starting in 2001 and basically ending in 2015-16. Cosmos Energy from the United States did an offshore oil drilling in 2015, and an Irish company did onshore in 2016. These things did not find anything viable, and the programs have basically been closed down, and there's no real engagement going on. There's a British company selling seismic data collected 2000 and I'm maybe guessing 2018, 19, 20 or something. A UK company acquired seafloor data in Western Sahara, and that's currently being sold on the international market. But that's the only thing happening now on the oil sector. The last thing I just wanted to say is a dangerous development, so to say, or what we hope we will see an end to with the Court of Justice of the EU. What we hope we will see an end to is that private companies follow, so to say, the example of the European Union in lying about the Sahrawi people's rights and facts relating to the Sahrawi people. Not only is the self-determination aspect ignored by the private companies, but they're also claiming that this people benefits from it. Now, the problem with all these industries, both in the phosphates, in the oil, in the renewable, in the infrastructure, is that the large companies involved, like Cosmos Energy in the United States or the phosphate importers, they refer to, according to social impact assessments we've done, according to audit reports we've made, according to legal opinions we've commissioned, according to scoping exercises we've had on the ground, this is to the benefit of the local population. So they will make reference to these kind of apparently independent reports. And this is all over the place. So all the large ones use this narrative, but none of the reports are public. So it is impossible for the Sahrawis, for the public opinion, to look at the methodology, to look at who was actually contacted. Was any Sahrawi contacted at all, or was it only the Moroccan government? Was the legal aspect looked upon at all? Was the self-determination commented on? None of these things are actually possible to see. And so we have 3 companies, law firms from the US, that are heavily involved in providing these sort of data or social data for the phosphate sector, and none of them want to comment on providing the reports. They're all secret. We have an American company or organization that is a Moroccan American organization set up to benefit the Moroccan people, and they are providing advice to foreign companies. We have currently a British American company involved for a French energy company, infrastructure company. The concerning thing here is that if a Sahrawi group receives an email from any of these consultancy firms working for Moroccan interests, responding to any sort of question, suddenly they're dragged into a process of legitimizing an operation that has never obtained the consent of the Sahrawi people. The worst case is perhaps a Sahrawi group that was in the occupied territories, that was invited by the European Commission to take part in the alleged consultation exercise for a trade agreement. So they traveled to Brussels only to discover that the Commission had lied about Polisario having agreed to it. So the Commission lied about Polisario's approach to such agreement, and then this little association, they got well, they had problems because then they were stuck in how to relate to this, and yeah, it's really complicated how this. Sahrawi groups need to be careful, and even sending letters of condemnation is difficult because obviously condemnation letters are used by the companies to say that there is actually a dialogue. So the best is maybe just not to respond when contacted by private interests. Anyway, so that's just my little introduction. I can comment more on any of these elements afterwards. There's some large lines to the plunder topic. Thank you so much, and I give the word to my colleague.
Thank you, Erik. I appreciate that. LAGDAF, please, the floor is yours.
The audio, it's okay, Moulay Ahmed?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me, everyone. Well, thank you very much for this initiative to highlight the situation in Western Sahara. Well, first of all, I was trying to, but maybe Erik didn't leave me too much to speak about natural resources, but I'll try to do my best. Well, first of all, it's good to geographically location of Western Sahara. Western Sahara, it's located in the northwest part of Africa. It has 285,000 square kilometers of land. It's bordered by the north with Morocco, and northeast with Algeria, southwest with Mauritania, and the west it's with the Atlantic Ocean, about 1,100 miles. The natural resources in Western Sahara, it's phosphates, iron, gold, sand, probably oil and gas, uranium, titanium, and extensive fishing along the Atlantic coastline. Also, solar and eolic energy. Following in 1975, when the Green March comes to Western Sahara, the Moroccan state has sponsored settlement schemes. The Moroccan government brought thousands of settlers into the occupied part of Western Sahara, who control 75% of this territory. And just by 2015, the estimation of Moroccan settlers in Western Sahara, it's about 500,000. So nowadays, the natives of that land, Western Sahara, it represents between 16% to 20% as maximum. In fact, the natural resources for Western Sahara that Morocco buys, the political position of the state to finance lobbyists in the EU and the United States to defend the Moroccan thesis of occupation, and at the same time to develop its internal economy and encourage the movement of Moroccan population to Western Sahara to make Sahrawi minority in their homeland. Western Sahara, it's regarded by the United Nations as the last colony in Africa. However, Morocco continues to occupy the Sahrawi territory without any respect to United Nations resolutions on decolonization. The main driver of this conversation, of course, is decolonization, its natural resources. United Nations stipulate that exploitation of natural resources in Western Sahara is in line with the international law if it is not for the benefit of the population on their behalf or in consultation with their representative, and in this case, the representative of Western Sahara, it's the Polisario Front. Here in Ireland, on behalf of Western Sahara Action Ireland, that's our organization here, we made a protest against Sun Leon Energy. Sun Leon Energy, it's an American oil energy company, sorry. They signed a contract with Morocco maybe 10 or 11 years ago, but they never been they never had any profit about this contract because they had some troubles with the Moroccan government. They did some prospection, so on, but never nothing happened. This oil gas exploration company, San Leon Energy, which has its headquarters here in Dublin, is under investigation by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in relation to its activities in Western Sahara. This case was presented by the Global Legal Action Network, GLAN, a non-government agency, made this formal in October 2018. Well, to be honest, this I would like to speak with the human rights in at least in Western Sahara, because it's very, very linked with all these natural resources which are plundering by Morocco government. All this plundering of natural resources is deteriorating the human rights in Western Sahara. For instance, Sultana Khaya, she's an activist, a very well-known activist, Sahrawi activist in Boukhador. It's one of the cities in Western Sahara. She's now more than 107 days under house arrest, and she is harassed and attacked by the Secret Service. Even they are involved settlers, Moroccan settlers, against this woman. 4 days ago, they throw to her a fish hook, a big one, maybe for shark or something like that. I don't know, but it's really big. And 2 days ago, they throw to her and her family a liquid toxic acid, just 2 days ago. And another case, it's Mohammed Lamin Haddi. Mohammed Lamin, I would like, I didn't know that we are going to use this Microsoft because I am using Apple, so I can't share with you some pictures here about these prisoners in 2010. Since 2010, the group of the music, and this one is a journalist. He's one of them. He was sentenced by 25 years since 2010. He's in jail, and he is more than 50 days now in hunger strike. And when his mom and sister traveled to see him from El Ayun to Tiflit prison, we call it like Guantanamo, Tiflit 2, because there are Tiflit 1 and Tiflit 2. Tiflit 2, it's very well known in Morocco as a Guantanamo. When this mom and the sister of Mohammed Lamin, they traveled 1,200 kilometers from Layun to Tiflit, they were denied to see this man, because right now we don't know if he is alive or not, because 50 days in hunger strike, that's really hard. And this is not the first case. Before, it's happened with Abdallah Abba and Bashir Khadda. They are another prisoners now, 10 years in prison. And there is one of them. He died in 2018, Ayubi, called Ayubi. The result of this, his death, it's the tortures he received in prison. And lately, since the break of the ceasefire, which was 13 November 2020, there are a lot of arbitrary detentions. For instance, in 14 December, just 1 day after the broken of ceasefire, he was arrested, Mohammed Alewa, he's a minor, and Nasrallah Mahfoud, sentenced to 10 months, and Ali Shiqali, another 10 months. All this situation, it's deteriorated, or since 13 November 2020, the Moroccan government, they are acting in a really brutally acts against all these activists. And concerning the settlers, the final, just I'm gonna give you a number that all these settlers, they are relocated to the territory in the formal sector, and they earn 85% more than the original inhabitant, than the native people of Western Sahara. The government of Morocco also provides fuel, food, subsided, and all these settlers are exempted from tax. In spite of this fact, it's prohibited by the international humanitarian law. And that's it.
Thank you, Lagdaf. Thank you for all the insights. This point, in respect for the time we have allocated for this webinar, I know we have an hour, and I'd like to start with, if anybody have any questions, please feel free to ask us questions. If not, I will go ahead and start with some that they have been probably answered. Let me just mute. I think I'm hearing some echo. Yeah. So I have a couple of questions, and these are mostly answered already by Erik, and I have one of them is in regards to the legitimacy that the international law provides to the occupation in general. My question is, does the international law actually prohibit the business activities in occupied territory? Is it explicitly prohibited, or is there, I know that most of the progress, most of the UN basically lack of action or lack of being transparent about a territory that within its resolutions with its resolution, it states that the Western Sahara is an occupied territory and it's a question of a decolonization. However, it doesn't come forward as transparent when it comes to the usage or the uses of the exploitation or exploration of the natural resources. Is that legal or prohibited by international law?
If I may, I am no legal scholar. I'm not a jurist or lawyer, so I feel a little bit uncomfortable responding to it.
Absolutely.
What is very clear, and just a few points yet. There are no United Nations Security Council sanctions. So there are no, it is not illegal from a Security Council perspective. The UN member states are not obliged to follow UN sanctions on business activity in Western Sahara. And that absence of a UN Security Council that implements sanctions means that all companies can basically say the UN has not prohibited trade with Western Sahara, and they're perfectly correct. There is no established UN sanction regime. There was one such when South Africa occupied the non-self-governing territory of Namibia. There were sanctions on Namibia, right? But we don't have such sanctions on Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara. So that is one problem. And then you can ask, what is legal and what is not in the case of Western Sahara? Now, there are two legal regimes that it is normal that governments, legal scholars, companies would address when assessing the legality of operations in Western Sahara. One is relating to international humanitarian law. What is allowed in an occupied territory? what is allowed for an occupier to do on occupied land. That's one set of legal world that you can view these things in. The other narrative you can assess these things in is the non-self-governing territory law. What is allowed to do in a colony? The problem with Western Sahara is far too often the colony terminology is used to assess the legality. The problem is because Western Sahara has no colonial power. There is no colonial power. And if I may comment quickly on LAGDAF's intervention, the Security Council was requested, this is now 20 years ago, but the UN Security Council was asked about the legality, or wanted to address the legality, of Morocco's oil exploration in Western Sahara. Morocco signed 2 oil agreements in 2001 with a French and American oil company, and the Security Council asked its legal department, its legal office, for an assessment of the legality. An assessment that came in January 2002. And that legal assessment summarizes the very few legal precedents that exist. And it talks about Indonesia's occupation of East Timor and South Africa's of Namibia, 2 occupied and occupied non-self-governing territories. The only 2 other cases that really exist. And based on that little precedent, it mentions first, Western Sahara has basically no colonial power to administer Western Sahara, because Spain has abandoned its obligations. So this means the fact that Western Sahara is a colony without a colonial power, it is no colonial power that is taking that is honoring the obligations that falls to a colonial power, right? So addressing the non-self-governing territory narrative when there is no colonial power to make sure this is respected, it doesn't make any sense. Western Sahara, it only makes sense if you, well, what makes sense is that the people of such a territory have the right to consent. They have a right to self-determination. But assessing it within the framework of what elsewhere would be okay in a colony, that does not make much sense. And that is exactly what the Court of Justice says of the European Union. Morocco has no mandate to administer the territory. And within this UN opinion, which still many people refer to, in my opinion, we should not refer to that opinion anymore. First of all, it is an opinion with many different conflicting things internally. Second of all, it does not view things in light of the laws of occupation. But perhaps most importantly, the legal weight of the Court of Justice is so much more important than this UN legal opinion from 2002. So we should not anymore make reference to that UN legal opinion. That is very important. It is the only part of that legal opinion that has any relevance is the last concluding sentence saying that the people of Western Sahara's wishes must be respected. That's the only thing that gives any meaning. And there is an element in that legal opinion that talks about benefits and that talks about consultation, and both were mentioned by LAGDAF, and I think we should not mention it. That is the reference to that sentence in the Corell opinion is made by the European Union. It should not be made by us. We should not talk about benefits to the population and that consultation should be done with the Sahrawis. That's not what it is. It's about not consultation, it's consent. There's two different things. Consultation and consent are different things. And population and people are different things. And wishes and benefits are different things. And we should refer to the Court of Justice. When we talk about legality, we should talk about the Court of Justice of the EU and not this old legal opinion from 2002. This is a long explanation, but I see basically on the panelists here today that most of you, I recognize most names, and I see that many of you know well the issue of Western Sahara. So I do a technical. But the short question is, the short answer is it's there are no UN sanctions, but it can still be in violation of international law if the Sahrawis object to it, which is complicated for a non-legal person like me to get my head around. Sorry, that was a long answer to something, and I feel it's important that we address this in the view of the Court of Justice of the EU and not in the UN legal opinion 2002 narrative.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that is my...
Absolutely. Thank you. And I apologize if I put you in that spot.
No, but it's important that we have the chance to talk about these things. We all need to know these things, I think. Even the companies, and everybody needs to be on this spot. So thank you for putting us on that spot.
One thing, like just to reference what you mentioned earlier, the issue on the difference between the terminology is what really drags a lot of the folks who are not as either educated about the conflict, or just there is a lot that goes around the rhetoric or the usage of specific words that can definitely
it is. There are many legal documents we can refer to, and it's basically a matter of choice. Which one is the strategically or the factually best ones to use? And things have changed as well over time. So what was good ways of addressing this in the past is no longer as good, because we have now much stronger words than what even our organization used to be having. So we've been changing the ways of formulating this on our own website. We make no longer reference to these legal opinions. Now we make reference to the court cases. So it's also been a development for me as well, and on how we talk about these things. It's
Yeah, and just to follow up on that question, and I do see some hands on the audience. I'd like to ask another question. This is in regards to the European Court of Justice. Just what do you see the next ruling and would there be any impact? And also another question, if you can tell me or tell us a little bit about the EU kind of double standard, although the EU Court of Justice is stating, or in its advisory opinion, is saying something, whereas the European Union is taking a different route. Just a little bit about the double standard that the European not respecting those rulings. And then I will go ahead and start. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it to me or to Lagdaf?
That would be for either of you. But that's the EU Court of Justice ruling. Since both of you are in the EU, I'd like to hear your opinion about what do you expect, and would there be any difference? And was it this year different?
Well, when it comes to the nobody knows how the European Union ruling will end on the two court cases. We don't know. And what is obvious, what is very, very obvious, is that the European Union, the Commission and the Council has lied to the member states and the Parliament relating to the prerequisite that the court presented. The court said you have to obtain the consent, but what the Commission and the Council has done is far from that. They've been lying, and anyone who just looks at the files, it takes any UN member state would have seen this in a matter of half an hour if they had bothered to look at it. So the Swedish government says so very clearly that the Commission has not done what the court obliged them to do. So if the court rules in the way that the Swedish government sees this, it's a victory. It is so easy to see that the European Union institution have been lying about it. Our name, the name of my association, is used by the Commission to legitimize a new trade agreement because they said we have been consulted, but we have not. our correspondence with the European Union is public, online. We have condemned the European Union and rejected to take part. And it's all public information, and still the Commission uses our name to legitimize a new trade agreement. So it's so obvious that they're lying and they're breaking the law, basically. So I think you have to be positive. The double standards is so basic. The European Union on one hand say we support the rights of self-determination, and on the other they undermine it. In that way, so Donald Trump is more clear because he's actually, you know, he's saying bullshit and is acting bullshit. But the European Union is saying the good things, but they're acting totally contrary to it. So in a way, Trump is more honest than the European Union, so to say.
Yeah, thank you for the comparison.
So, anyway,
Definitely.
anyway.
Definitely appreciate the comparison.
Just to add something to
Yes, please go ahead.
About this situation, about this fact. To be clear, well, all we know what's happened exactly what in the European Court, and afterwards what's happened in the trade agreement between Morocco and the EU. They are acting like businessmen in Brussels. To be honest, above all, France and Spanish government, they're pushing always on their interests. That's the truth, you know. That's the naked word. The naked word, it's our problem. Our problem nowadays, it's not all the European Union, but mostly it's the Spanish government and France. That's it.
There's
Sorry,
no
I was
audio.
muted.
Yeah.
I was muted. My bad. So just to add another question, this will be my last question before I move to the audience question. This is in regards to, just generally speaking, the reason we sparked the conversation about natural resources and the plundering of Western Sahara natural resources in general is that almost every time you look or you search or you talk about the natural resource or company that do this type of illegal plundering, they often bring that same topic that Erik brought earlier, that this is for the benefit of the people, of the population, that for the lack of better word. Laghdaf, is there any, are there really any infrastructure that they claim to have in the occupied territory for those who have no visibility on the occupied territories? Are we seeing this? From my understanding, there is absolutely none, but I could be wrong. Are there any schools? Are there any, and you mentioned earlier that one, just the pay grade, the taxes, the subsidy, the Moroccanization project that sponsors settlers to move into the territory. Are we seeing any improvement to the infrastructure in the occupied territory of Western Sahara, or this is whole just a bluff in a sense?
I think there are lots of infrastructure projects that have an effect on the population on the ground. Ports, roads, electricity, water, desalinization, trainings, surveillance, all kinds of stuff that has some sort of impact of the population on the ground. Most recently, well, we published a story on our website last week on the tens of millions of euros that Morocco is investing in Western Sahara of European Union funding. Those are infrastructure programs that have an effect on the population. The problem, of course, is that the population is primarily Moroccan settlers and not Sahrawis. So it has an effect, and that's why the Moroccan government is doing it, and that's why the European Union is funding it, because it has an effect. It is reported on. There are ports, port infrastructure, etc. The problem is this is the development owned by the Moroccan government. It's not the Sahrawi people's development. is not their development. They have the right to develop these things themselves. Why would the Sahrawis build dormitories for Moroccan fishermen? It doesn't make sense at all that Sahrawis are unemployed and then Moroccan government builds dormitories and facilities for Moroccan fishermen, seasonal or permanent fishermen. It doesn't make any sense at all. So yes, there are infrastructure projects. The problem is that they are Moroccan owned.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just a little bit, a little more things about this situation in occupied areas of Western Sahara. As I mentioned before, I told you that most of the people who are working nowadays in Western Sahara, 85% to 90% of Moroccan, they came there straight away. They have their job, they have their benefits, they have their exclusion of taxes and so on. And our people, Western Sahara, who are the native people of that region, mostly more of 80% of our young people nowadays are unemployed. Also, there is no infrastructure, as Erik said. There is no any investment from all the help coming from, for instance, all this money coming from Europe. They are not invested in Western Sahara. Even just, I'm going to give you an example. For instance, if you go to the hospital, any hospital in Laayoune now, or Bokhador, or Dakhla, or Smara, which is the main cities in Western Sahara, you have to bring with you your medicaments, because the doctor has only the consultation, has only his words, but there is no any medication. And with this, I think it's very clear the situation.
I agree. I totally agree.
Sorry?
Yeah, you have a good point. You have a good, very valid point. I agree.
Yeah. Mostly of workers in Western Sahara, for instance, in Phosphate, which is the company for phosphates, it's 95% are settlers. The rest, 5%, maybe to 7%, are people from Western Sahara. You know, and as you said, there is no any investment in infrastructures, no water. Everything. It's really a disaster there. There are a lot. They are acting like a mafia in Western Sahara. They're acting exactly. It's not like a government. It's not a responsible government who are looking for the people of Western Sahara or Moroccan people or something like that. Even there are some. Mostly they are using all this money for their own benefits. You know, they don't care about people. They don't care about the situation. It's plundering. 24 hours, phosphatos, fish. Sending fish to Europe and everything. It's just like it's in a rush. They want to take everything in less than 24 hours.
Thank you, Lagdaf. I have two hands that were raised, and I see Sammy Corso. Please, if you want to go ahead, ask your question, feel free to unmute yourself, and then followed by Pedro Pinto. Please. Both are muted, so if you want to unmute your microphone, or I can unmute you. Pedro, go ahead.
Oh yes, I'm here already. But you somebody else before, so I was waiting.
That's okay. I think Sammy, of course, was the one who raised his hand earlier, but doesn't seem like maybe he's having a microphone issue or audio issue.
Well, then I start.
Yeah.
First of all, and as I wrote already in the chat, I liked very much the presentation of Erik. It is everything what he said is okay, with the very, very small difference that in the beginning he said that there was no there were no sanctions, and this I understood that it would be very unclear if there was illegality, but the illegality is there, very, very, very clear. The fact that there are no sanctions is because Erik spoke about the two cases who were seen as examples. The case of Namibia and East Timor. Of course, in East Timor there was no sanctions because it was the United Nations did more or less the same as it did with Western Sahara. In the case of Namibia, there were sanctions. And why? Because the Security Council organized this UN Council for Namibia, and the UN Council for Namibia had the so-called Decree Number 1, from which all countries in the world had to accept that it would be illegal, and they would have, of course, sanctions if they were using the resources of Namibia, of course, with explored by South Africa of apartheid at that time. By the way, one of the cases I studied when in Leiden was the fact that enterprises of Holland were being brought to court because of this, because of the use of natural resources in Namibia. Erik spoke as well about Hans Corell and the advisory opinion for Security Council of 2002. And he said very well that we should only take of this advisory opinion. What was important was the fact that the Sahrawis should give the consent. That's in fact true. The problem with Hans Corell at that time was at the time of this advisory opinion was he made he created, let us say, something that doesn't exist in international law. Or we have an administering power, and yes, the fact is that Western Sahara has an administering power, only is administering power de jure, even if Spain has pretended to leave the territory and have no more responsibility about the territory. That doesn't mean that they didn't that they lost the position of administering power. They are, of course, wrong that they don't use it, but they are the administering power, de jure. Curiously, it seems that the United Nations is bringing again the Spain in the documents as administering power. For some time they didn't say anything about it. And another thing important is that the most important court in Spain for administrative cases, they Audiencia Nacional, they already stated black and white that Spain continues to be the administering power, there is no other possibility. Or Morocco is administering power, and it is not, of course. It is Spain, or it is an occupying power, and it's exactly what happened. It is an occupying power. The fact that this confusion between administering power and administrative power is more complicated because, for instance, in Portuguese, we have potência administrante quando se fala, when we speak about potência administrante, we are talking about administering power. In Spain, they call it administradora, and that makes the confusion between this administering power and this what Hans Corell explained that would be a possibility for Morocco. Another thing that Hans Corell said that it was very, very strange is the fact that he made a distinction between exploring and exploiting. Exploring would be legal, exploiting not if there was no consent and there was no the wishes or the not wishes the interests of the people of Western Sahara were not set. Making this distinction between exploring and exploiting, if I make a comparison, for instance, with a situation within a country, it is not international law, but just the law of one country only. I would say this: imagine that somebody intends to take the money or whatever, or the goods who are in a safe in the house of somebody. He brings he asks somebody to go to the house and to look to the code of the safe, and then using that code, he will go there and will steal the what is in the safe. Now, for national legislation, it's very clear that somebody was going there to prepare the illegal act, the crime, is also a criminal. Now, in this case, Hans Corell made the criminal, those who are exploring, preparing the other crime, which is exploiting. They made a difference between one is legal, the other is illegal. About the Court of Justice of the European Union, I think that Erik has explained it also very, very well. I only wanted to add something, is that until now, the European Court of Justice has said that, and that's why technically they didn't. The Polisario lost the case technically. They made this. Somebody has the thing at the same time.
Okay. Go.
Okay. They said that the court said before that the fact that Western Sahara is a separate territory from Morocco, which is completely true. The agreements couldn't be applicable to the Western Sahara, and of course, that is a little bit fiction, because everybody knew that the natural resources were coming from the Western Sahara, and they were sold to other countries, or in the case of fisheries, other countries were directly stealing the fisheries of the Sahrawis. But what happened with this new agreement is that now, black on white, Western Sahara is the territory where all this happens, the stealing of the resources. That means, in my opinion, that it would be very, very strange if the European Court of Justice doesn't say this time the agreement is null and void. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pedro. Appreciate the insight. So just for the sake of time, I know we all agreed that this will go about an hour, and it took a little bit longer than it should. We truly appreciate everyone's time. So I have, I saw Sami Corsa. Samko, if you have a quick question, please either ask it right now, or we're gonna have to stop the recording. And if you have further questions for the guest or for anyone, really, feel free to reach out to us. And before ending this, I would like to thank both everyone who showed up, everyone who is here to learn, and thank our special guest, Erik and LAGDAF. Truly appreciate your time coming here and explaining and shedding some lights on the Western Sahara and the plundering of its natural resources. Thank you very much, everyone.
Moulay,
Thank
just little bit quick, something very quick to
Yes,
to finish this meeting. Well, thank you very much for everyone. First of all, thank everyone to be interested in highlighting this situation in Western Sahara about natural resources plundering in Western Sahara. a free Western Sahara in Africa, it's not benefiting only the people from Western Sahara. It's essential. It's essential. It's for stability in the whole region of the Maghreb. Not only we are going to benefit the people from Western Sahara, even people from Morocco, concerning human rights, concerning the regime they are living under, that kind of regime, and all the countries of the Sahel, concerning terrorism, security, and so on. Western Sahara, as a free country, it's essential in the area because Morocco is using that area for introducing thousands and thousands of tons of drugs for financing terrorism in the north of Mali and Niger and so on. So a free Western Sahara, it's going to be the last country in Africa to free colonialism in Africa. And thank you for being here, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, LAGDAF. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
You too. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.